generation. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm being super biased given the fact that she was born and raised in Chicago. So that's one very big reason as to why. So that's why I love this building, the Vista Tower, but as well, she designed personally my favorite building in all of Chicago, which I invite you to take a look at next. Just be careful with the sun. Here to the top left-hand side, as you'll notice, this blue glass building with the white wavy balconies hanging right out of it. Now that is called the Aqua Tower. That was completed back in the year 2009. Same architect, it's roughly the exact same thing. It's residential and hotel space. Those balconies that they wave in and out of the building, that's actually made so that every single resident gets a pretty cool, unique perspective, a unique view of the city of Chicago. Which me personally, I would absolutely love to live in this building. It's definitely been my dream place ever since I was 11 years old when the building was officially completed in 2009. So hopefully in the near future that actually becomes possible, as I'm actually set to sit for my CPA exam this upcoming October. Thank you so much. As hopefully when I get the chance to do so and I save up my money in the next couple of years, I can put money down for my dream condo, my dream home that sits on the 71st floor of this building. And when that does happen, you are all invited to my big housewarming party that I'll be throwing up on the 71st floor. So we'll have some really great food, really great drinks. Our bartender Lainey will be up there serving all sorts of really great drinks. And as well, we'll have a really beautiful view of the Chicago River. So that's definitely something to look forward to. And as well, our great friend Andre the Bubble Guy will be joining us as well, giving us some wonderful bubbles straight along the Chicago River. So really cool guy. But that is the Aqua Tower once again from the year 2009. Versus my favorite building in all of Chicago. Coming up directly in front of us, this tall blue glass building soaring straight into the sky with the spire sitting at the very top of it. This is the Trump International Hotel and Tower, which is Chicago's second tallest skyscraper at this particular moment, at the height of 1,383 feet. The height of the building actually includes the spire that sits at the very top of it. As it is designed by a Chicago native named Adrian Smith, being born, raised, living, and working in the city of Chicago, he designs this building to respect other buildings that have been here for many years prior to adding the new Talcott on the block in the year 2009. So you will in fact notice that the building has a total of 3 setbacks before it actually reaches the rooftop of the building. Now 2 of the 3 setbacks are actually set to correspond to different building heights along the river. So what I mean by this exactly, if you notice this first setback coming up here to the right side of the building, that's actually set to correspond to the exact same height of this white stone building with the clock sitting at the very top of it here to the right. As this is a Wrigley building as it dates back to the early 1920s. So here you see how a building from somewhat recent times, 2009, is respecting an older building from the 1920s. You'll tend to see this quite a lot with newer buildings, as it's something that's called contextualism, as they're buildings that are literally context sensitive. They're messing around with the environment, the surrounding of a building. We'll talk about 2 other really great examples a little bit later, but it's much more common with newer buildings. But now with older buildings, for example here to the right, this beautiful white glazed terracotta tower with the clock, that is Wrigley once again. With Wrigley Chewing Gum or Wrigley Field where the Chicago Cubs play, this opens up as their headquarters back in the early 20s. But the building itself is inspired by an old Spanish cathedral named La Giralda Tower that sits over in Seville, Spain. As with this heavy European inspiration, this was in fact a very popular way in which architects would design buildings throughout the early 1900s to mid-1920s, as they would tend to look into old European structures for inspiration of beauty, of what exactly looked nice, what exactly looked cool, as American architecture was still relatively young throughout that time in America, throughout the early 1900s. So basically any other building that you see that has that European vibe, that European design, it is more than likely from that exact same time period. So for example, here to the top left-hand corner, you'll see this building with the dome sitting at the very top of it, as this is called 35 East Wacker Drive, as it was completed back in the year 1926. So as what you see in common with those 2 buildings are from the exact same time period, meaning they're actually from the exact same style of architecture as well. That style of architecture is referred to as the revivalist style, which is simply reviving an older style of European building but using it as a much more modern office building in Chicago. So they're reviving it once again. But now, taking a look next here to the top right-hand side, you notice by far 2 of Chicago's most photographed buildings, the Corn on the Cobs, officially Marina City from the year 1968. Now these two beautiful twin buildings, as they were designed by a Chicago native named Bertrand Goldberg. He introduces the idea of Marina City to simply be an entire community within this complex of buildings. The first 13 stories of the building is a parking garage. Towards the top are the residential units. And to the bottom right-hand side, underneath the State Street Bridge, as we'll pass in the next couple of moments, it has its very own marina. But as well, restaurants, grocery store, bowling alley, beauty salon, library, laundromat, and even the Chicago House of Blues. It's right in between the two buildings. So it's insane to see just how much exactly is set to offer in the inside of Marina City, as it was originally marketed as a city within a city. Now the purpose of constructing this back in the late 60s was actually a way to attract livelihood here in downtown Chicago. Because what the issue was before the 1960s, no one wanted to actually live in downtown. And that was mainly because throughout that time and anywhere before that, Chicago was known to be a relatively industrial city. It was a very hardworking city, as all downtown was known for was just hardcore workplace environment. So in order to change that, Marina City offered everything but everything under one single roof. And this is what allowed to influence the downtown that we see today. It's definitely now much more recreational, much more relaxing, much more fun. So that's what we started to see directly towards the surroundings nowadays. And there was a huge thanks to Marina City that we see that happen in the late 1960s. But coming up next here to the left, just careful with the sun, as you notice this blue glass building with the white granite line shooting up directly towards the top. This is called 77 Wacker Drive. This was completed in the year 1991. As this was designed by a Spanish architect named Ricardo Bofill, bringing this building with heavy European elements of architecture, but older classical elements. And this example, as you notice, the white granite lines represent the Greek columns, and the triangular rooftop that it has called a pediment, representing the Greek Parthenon over in Athens, Greece. So here you see older Greek classical elements of architecture, so much more modern office building from the early 90s. Directly next to it, though, you get the chance to see this blue glass building. This is called 111 Wacker. Now, this is much more recent. This is from 2014. As this is another great example of contextualism. As you notice that mid balcony that it has, that balcony is actually set to correspond to the exact same height of the first rooftop or the first setback of the stone building as it's directly next to it. Now the stone building next to it, that's called LaSalle Wacker. So it was completed in the year 1930. So once again, we see the same idea, that a newer generation of architects is respecting an older generation, just as we saw with the Trump Tower just moments ago. So this is where we start to see what I like to personally call like a little fist bump or a little high five, or nowadays a little elbow bump from one architect to another, a newer generation. It's that form of respect called contextualism. These buildings are context sensitive. So that is now the second example. We have one more to talk about a little bit later. But really cool how the train is passing by directly in front of us. It's the Brown Line train making its way over towards the north side. And almost anywhere you need to on the train. I'll be rather happy to talk a little bit about the train a little bit later on the way back. But here to the right-hand side, as you notice, this very large stone building coming up. This is called the Merchandise Mart, that was completed back in the year 1930. As by far one of the largest buildings in the world, fitting over 4 million square feet worth of floor space. That is basically 73 American football fields of floor space that fit in the inside of this building. It was so big of a building, in fact, it had its very own zip code into the year 2004. Now it corresponds to the surrounding of the neighborhood. 38 elevators, over 7.5 miles of hallway space. It takes up to 2 city blocks to complete. It is a humongous building. But the building itself is designed by a group of architects named Graham, Anderson, Probst, and Weitz. Now, those architects designed this building in a very specific manner that is known as the Art Deco style from the late 1920s to the early 1930s. There are 3 very common characteristics in that style, which number 1 being the Indiana limestone facade, number 2, the dark inset windows that sit right in between that they create the streamlined verticality of the building, and number 3 is the ornamentation, the sign of the building. So with those 3 characteristics, it's an easy way to point out all the Art Deco buildings that we'll pass a little bit later on the tour. We'll see 3 other really great examples a little bit later. But currently we are approaching the confluence of the Chicago River, where the 3 branches of the river intersect, where the main branch meets up with the south branch to the left and the north branch over to the right-hand side. This Y-shaped intersection that we've gotten the chance to see some really beautiful buildings grow throughout the last couple of years. For example, this blue glass building with the arc towards the bottom and top of it, that's called River Point, which is a 52-story office tower that was completed back in 2017. And it sits along a 2.5-acre park directly towards the surrounding. And this is actually corresponding to a law that was introduced in Chicago back in the late 90s, basically stating that any building that is built along the river's edge is required to have some sort of public accessibility towards the Chicago River. Whether it be a park, a plaza, a river walk, there needs to be some sort of public accessibility. They did a pretty good job here with beautiful River Point in 2017, very, very recent. Now, as we make a right turn here onto the north branch of the river, we're going to spend a few moments over here. But don't worry, we'll be sure to visit the south branch a little bit later and all those fascinating buildings that are to that side of the city. We'll be sure to visit very soon. So we're going to take a trip up north. As the first building that I invite you to take a look at from here is this pink brick building over to the left. Now that is the Fulton House. It is by far the oldest building that we're going to visit on the tour today, as it dates back to the year 1898. Now, when the building was originally opened, it was used as a cold storage warehouse. It's back when Chicago had the famous meat packing industry from the 1860s to the 1970s. Eventually, when there is no more use for this, given the fact that the industry dissolves going into the late 70s, it wasn't until the early 80s where developers decided to finally renovate the building and make it residential, which it is known for today. They have a little bit of office space in the first couple of floors as well. But across the river here to the right-hand side, as you notice this old railroad bridge. This is from the year 1908. It was last used in the year 1999. But now, the only reason why this bridge still remains here in Chicago is mainly because it shows us as to how exactly the bridges function in the city. As you may notice, that giant yellow concrete block that sits directly behind the bridge, that is used as a counterweight to lift up the tons of steel that bridge uses. So think of the bridge simply as a giant seesaw or a teeter tot. So you put weight on one side of the bridge, it lifts up the complete opposite side. That's how all the bridges that we see, that we pass on the tour today, that's how they work. That's the magic behind it. Here to your left-hand side, as you notice, this quite interesting triangular structure. Here goes the river cottages, completed back in the late 1970s, as they were designed by an architect from the state of Illinois named Harry Weiss. Harry Weiss introducing the idea of the river cottages to be considered to be the very first place to live on the north branch of the Chicago River. At a point in time when this area of the north branch was known to be very industrial, and as well the river was very polluted here along the north branch, so no one wanted to live anywhere near here. They thought this was a complete terrible idea. But Harry Weiss said, you know what, be patient, little by little this area is going to change. What ended up happening going into the late 1990s, his vision starts to form little by little. In the year 2001 in particular, these townhomes are completed here to the left-hand side. And in case you're curious, how much are these places going for on the market right now? We see anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000 square foot unit, range anywhere from 1.6 to about $2.3 million at a rough average here to the left-hand side. These townhomes from 2001. But with that said, as I just gave you guys a bunch of information, I don't want to burn you guys out with a bunch of info. So what I'm going to do right now, you guys can take this time for yourselves. If you guys want to have a quick chat with yourselves, talk within yourselves, or if you guys want to visit the bar, you guys want to visit the bathroom, it's a perfect opportunity to do so. So you're not really going to miss much. As I'll be getting off the microphone for the next couple of moments, I'll take a quick sip of water, and I'll be walking around the boat checking in on you guys to see how you guys are doing. So if you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns about anything thus far, feel free to definitely ask, because I'll be more than happy to help you guys out. It's a perfect time for any questions that you may have. I'll pick back up on the microphone when we head back over towards the Kidney Street Bridge, as our really great Captain Greg will be turning the boat around in the next couple of moments. So just take this time for yourselves, and we'll be right back. Enjoy.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
Oh, so yeah, it has the arches on top, and the way back on the previous tower. How are you guys over here? Is it okay?